Welcome to the Circulation and Gas Exchange podcast. This is Ms. Vitale. This is meant for my AP Biology students. Every organism must exchange materials and energy with its environment. The resources a cell needs move across the plasma membrane. For example, this salmon has feathery gills that have a network of capillaries which lie close to the gill's surface. Oxygen dissolved in the water diffuses into the blood. Salmon and other animals have organ systems specialized for exchanging materials with the environment. These systems are often accompanied by an internal transport system that moves fluids through the body. The circulatory system is your internal transport system. It transports oxygen and carbon dioxide, it distributes nutrients to cells, and it disposes of waste. Diffusion only works well over short distances. The circulatory system ensures that no substance must diffuse very far to enter or exit a cell. It rapidly transports fluids in bulk through the body. It is powered by the heart. Most invertebrates have a gastrovascular cavity or a circulatory system for internal transport. Cnidarians lack a mesoderm. They include hydras, jellyfish, sea anemones, coral. They have a simple body plan with a gastrovascular cavity that has a single opening for the mouth and the anus. The gastrovascular cavity serves for both digestion and distribution of substances. Digestion begins in the cavity. The inner layer of cells absorb the nutrients, which then move through the other layers of cells. Flatworms also have gastrovascular cavities. The flatness of the worms ensures materials only diffuse short distances. Animals with gastrovascular cavities only use diffusion. In more complex animals, gastrovascular cavities are insufficient. There are two types of closed circulatory systems, open and closed. Both have three basic components: blood, which is the circulatory fluid; blood vessels, which are tubes through which blood moves through the body; and the heart, which is a muscular pump. The heart powers circulation and creates blood pressure. Blood pressure is the force that blood exerts against the walls of blood vessels. An open circulatory system is found in arthropods and mollusks. There is no distinction between blood and interstitial fluid. Hemolymph is the general body fluid in an open circulatory system. Sinuses are the spaces surrounding organs. One or more hearts pump hemolymph into the sinuses. When the heart contracts, it pumps the hemolymph into the sinuses. When the heart relaxes, it draws hemolymph into the heart. Body movements squeeze sinuses and circulate hemolymph. A closed circulatory system is where blood is confined to vessels, and it is distinct from interstitial fluid. Animals that have a closed circulatory system include earthworms, squid, octopuses, and vertebrates. One or more hearts pump blood into large vessels that branch into smaller ones. Materials then diffuse between the blood and the interstitial fluid. The cardiovascular system is the closed circulatory system found in vertebrates. The heart has one atrium or two atria. Those are the chambers that receive blood. It also has one or two ventricles. Those are the chambers that pump blood out of the heart. There are different types of blood vessels, mainly the arteries, veins, and capillaries. In humans, the blood vessels stretch over 62,000 miles, which is about 100,000 kilometers. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. The largest artery is the aorta. Arterioles are branches of arteries that go into organs and carry blood to the capillaries. Capillaries are microscopic vessels with very thin porous walls. Capillary beds are networks of capillaries that infiltrate tissues. Different substances diffuse in and out of the walls of the capillaries, carrying substances from the blood to the tissues and from the tissues to the blood. Your entire blood volume never leaves your capillaries. What does leave your capillaries are things like gases, white blood cells, nutrients. The only time your blood volume actually leaves your capillaries is if your capillaries are cut. Chemicals diffuse through the capillary walls between the blood and the interstitial fluid. Capillaries then converge into venules. They convey the blood from the capillary beds to the veins. The veins carry the blood back to the heart. The largest vein in the body is the vena cava. In general, animals with a high metabolic rate have more powerful hearts and more complex circulatory systems. Therefore, the complexity and the number of blood vessels in a particular organ are correlated with that organ's metabolic requirements. The biggest difference in cardiovascular adaptations in different animals is gills and lungs. The fish heart has two chambers, one atrium and one ventricle. The blood from the ventricle goes to the gills, it gets oxygen and disposes of CO2 across the gill capillaries. The gill capillaries empty into a vessel that carries oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. The systemic capillaries empties blood into the vein to the heart. The amphibian heart has three chambers, two atria and one ventricle. The ventricles pump blood into the forked artery that splits blood from the heart into the pulmocutaneous and systemic circulation. The pulmocutaneous circulation leads to capillaries in the gas exchange organs, which in amphibians is the lungs and the skin. The blood picks up oxygen and releases CO2 before returning to the left atrium. This oxygen-rich blood is pumped into systemic circulation. It supplies all of the body organs and returns oxygen-poor blood to the right atrium. This is an example of double circulation. It provides vigorous flow of blood to the brain, muscles, and other organs because it is pumped a second time. Most reptiles also have three-chambered hearts. However, the crocodilians, the crocodiles and alligators, and birds and mammals have the powerful four-chambered heart. This has two atria and two ventricles. The ventricles are completely divided. That totally separates oxygen-rich and oxygen-poor blood. The left side of the heart receives and pumps oxygen-rich blood. The right side of the heart receives and pumps oxygen-poor blood. The evolution of a powerful four-chambered heart was essential for endotherms, what we know as warm-blooded. They use 10 times more energy than ectotherms. Birds and mammals descended from different reptilian ancestors and evolved four-chambered hearts independently. This is an example of convergent evolution.
Your heart is a pump. It's a muscular organ about the size of your fist and is located slightly left of center in your chest. Your heart is divided into the right and left side. The division protects oxygen-rich blood from mixing with oxygen-poor blood. Together, your heart and blood vessels comprise your cardiovascular system, which circulates blood and oxygen around your body. In fact, your heart pumps about 5 quarts of blood every minute, and it beats about 100,000 times in one day. That's about 35 million times in a year. Oxygen-poor blood, blue blood, returns to the heart after circulating through your body. The right side of the heart, composed of the right atrium and ventricle, collects and pumps the blood to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. The lungs refresh the blood with a new supply of oxygen, making it turn red. Oxygen-rich blood, red blood, then enters the left side of the heart, composed of the left atrium and ventricle, and is pumped through the aorta to the body to supply tissues with oxygen. 4 valves within your heart keep your blood moving the right way. The tricuspid, mitral, pulmonary, and aortic valves work like gates on a fence. They open only one way and only when pushed on. Each valve opens and closes once per heartbeat, or about once every second. A beating heart contracts and relaxes. Contraction is called systole, and relaxing is called diastole. During systole, your ventricles contract, forcing blood into the going to your lungs and body, much like ketchup being forced out of a squeeze bottle. The right ventricle contracts a little bit before the left ventricle does. Your ventricles then relax during diastole and are filled with blood coming from the upper chambers, the left and right atria. Then the cycle starts over again. Your heart is nourished by blood too. Blood vessels called coronary arteries extend over the surface of your heart and branch into smaller capillaries. Here you can see just the network of blood vessels that feed your heart with oxygen-rich blood. Your heart also has electrical wiring, which keeps it beating. Electrical impulses begin high in the right atrium and travel through specialized pathways to the ventricles, delivering the signal to pump. The conduction system keeps your heart beating in a coordinated and normal rhythm, which in turn keeps blood circulating. The continuous exchange of oxygen-rich blood with oxygen-poor blood is what keeps you alive.
Let's take a closer look at the mammalian heart. It's located beneath your sternum, which is your breastbone. It's the size of a clenched fist. If you are a small female, your heart's going to be smaller, as is your fist. If you're a large male, your heart's going to be larger, as is your clenched fist. Your heart consists mainly of cardiac muscle. There are two atria, which are thin-walled. They are the collection chambers for blood returning to the heart, and they pump the blood to the ventricles. When your heart contracts, the pumping blood is called systole. When your heart relaxes, the chambers fill with blood, and it's called diastole. The cardiac cycle is one complete sequence of pumping and filling. Cardiac output is the volume of blood per minute that the left ventricle pumps. Cardiac output is dependent on two factors: heart rate, which is the rate of contraction. It's the number of beats per minute, which in the average human is about 70 beats per minute during a resting phase. The cardiac output is also dependent on stroke volume. That is the amount of blood pumped by the left ventricle during each contraction. The average for the human is about 75 milliliters. Your cardiac output is about 5.25 liters per minute. This is over 1.25 gallons, which is equal to the total volume of blood in your body. This is equivalent to pumping your body weight every 3 to 4 minutes. Heart valves total 4. They are made of flaps of connective tissue. The AV, or atrioventricular valve, is between each atrium and ventricle. It is composed of strong fibers, and it prevents them from turning inside out. The two AV valves are the bicuspid, which is also called the mitral valve, and the tricuspid. Contraction of the ventricle creates pressure that closes the AV valve. The semilunar valves are located at the two exits of the heart. The aorta leaves the left ventricle, and the pulmonary artery leaves the right ventricle. The semilunar valves are forced open by ventricular contractions. When the ventricle relaxes, blood flows back and closes the valve. The two types of semilunar valves are the pulmonic and the aortic valves. Your pulse is the rhythmic stretching of arteries caused by the pressure of blood driven by ventricular contraction. It measures heart rate. When we use a stethoscope, you're listening to valves closing. You hear this lubbed-up sound, lubbed-up, lubbed-up, lubbed-up. The lub is the recoil of the blood against the closed AV valve, and the dup is the recoil of blood against the semilunar valves. A heart murmur, most people think, is skipping beats, but in fact, it's caused by a defect in one or more of the valves, and it sounds like a hissing due to blood squirting back through the valve.